Got 20 seconds. Come on, Amanda, go.
Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Good. Get those knees up. Explode. Good. Explode. Let's go. Up.
Rock forward. Let's go. One more. Go.
You are listening to the Fight Strength Podcast with your hosts, Phil Daru and Jason Burgos.
What up, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to some FSP Fight Strength Podcast, episode 27. I'm Jason Burgos, the in-house MMA journalist and senior editor for MMAsucker.com. And, of course, with me is the main man plotting his next course on the high seas of strength and conditioning seminars and knowledge bombs, the Viking Prince and strength coach for American Top Team, Philip Daru. Phil, what is going on?
It just keeps getting better and better with these intros, man. I'm liking it. What's going on,
I think
brother?
you like Viking Prince. I think you like that one.
I'm there. I'm hoping all of my Scandinavian brothers and sisters would like that as well. So I will go ahead and thank you for that. And how are you doing, by the way?
I'm good. I mean, it was an exciting year. I mean, I had a fun 2017 was a very good year for me, and part of the reason is being able to do this show with you and some of the very cool experiences we've had in interviewing and talking to some really cool people. And I've really enjoyed 2017. I've really enjoyed 2017 with Fight Strength Podcast.
Yeah, man, it was a good year. It was definitely a good year, but next year is going to be even better.
Yep.
I'm more excited each time we do this. I know we're getting better at it, and more new, great, either guests or just in general, just me and you, shooting the shit. Mm-hmm. I think it's a thing. So either way, man, I think we're going to be doing it for a long time, and it's going to get better and better. So I'm looking into the future, and I'm really excited.
Now, so on this final recording of an FSP or Fight Strength episode for 2017, we're going to do just a straight-up big MMA kind of year review. We're going to take a look back at some of the more notable stories from the year that was and take a look forward to what may be coming next year in 2018. Now, the first storyline I want to get into in this year was, I feel, and we've talked about a little bit on the show this year, is there's been a devaluing of the UFC titles and a lot of, and it may not be a purposeful thing, but I think it's a big mistake by the company. I mean, here are some of the bullet points I came up with on this point. Now, first of all, earlier, Jermaine Daron wins the 145 women's title in February, then refuses to defend it against Cyborg, and it gets stripped in June. I mean, Conor McGregor has 2 titles to start the year. He defends none of them. He gets stripped of the 145 title, and he's still holding the 155 title currently, which is nuts. I mean, Michael Bisping avoids fighting guys like Yoel Romero, Jacare Souza, and Robert Whittaker all year, ends up fighting Dan Henderson at 46, who's 3-10 since 2013, and then fights GSP over a 4-year layoff. I mean, crazy. I mean, there's 2 interim title matches, 2 belts in the second half of the year. Dana White had 2 very public feuds with the guys that are consistently champions and some of the most notable champions in Woodley and Demetrius Johnson, which was nuts. So again, hurting your champions by devaluing the guys that are fighting for legitimate titles. And then heavyweight champion, which is often looked at as the most important division of combat sports in boxing or MMA. Heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic fights once this year. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you feel like the UFC's subconsciously just screwing up and taking importance from their titles?
I think that it was Joe Rogan that I said that I think Conor McGregor and the whole thing with what he did with boxing and now that he's just made so much money in the sport, I think everybody's so fixated on him that it ended up tarnishing a lot of the different fight matchups and things that we could have had going further in 2017, but yeah, it was a big disappointment. I would really say after that Conor thing with him and Mayweather, I didn't really see any real excitement in the fight game from that on, from the UFC at least.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a shame because we all know there's other companies in the world. Bellator's doing good, whatever. We're going to talk about them in a bit. But I mean, this is still the premier organization. This is the organization that has the best fighters in the world, and and I'm sure part of it is the new ownership, WME, IMG, and what worked so well for the UFC was they made their main events and focus on champions. Being a champion meant something. George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Randy Couture, like these guys, when we think of them, we think of them as championships and the big championship fights. And they've gone away from that again to the money fights now. And along with all this interim nonsense, they're putting more value in the money fight or the super fight or whatever, and it's like making world championships seem less important, and that's unfortunate too because that's where the money's made because of the Reebok deal and all these kinds of things. That's where a fighter wants to be so he can make a lot of money. Yeah, it's good you have interim titles because that's an extra chance to get a belt and make more money, but if the fans don't care, does having a title mean less money for fighters?
Yeah, to be honest, if the fans don't care, you don't have a fight. You don't have fans. You don't really have an organization. You don't have a promotion to actually build upon that. So from that point of view, you have to make sure the fans are intrigued and want to actually go see the fights, because at the end of the day, it is, and I've said this before, it's more entertainment than anything than a sport. The reason why the NFL, the NBA, not so much Major League Baseball, but these major sports do really well is because people will pay to go see these games and go see these athletes perform at the highest level. And if fans aren't intrigued of the matchups and don't want to see these fighters fight, then you're not going to have a career, or you're not going to have a promotion to go any further from there.
And I wonder if there's a connection, though, because this year, and we'll talk about this point a little later in the show, like the ratings for the UFC have come back a little bit from where they were in 2016. And, I'm sure there's a Conor McGregor effect, and some of their other marketing in terms of focusing on certain fighters has probably changed things. But I wonder if taking away and not putting more emphasis on a title has hurt, because part of being a champion is the people who fight them and the people working their way up to fighting them. So if a number one contenders fight isn't as big as a deal because the guy fighting in it isn't a name, so to speak, I wonder if it's hurt their ratings in a way, and when they're giving away free title shots, like say, for example, the women's 125 tough winner, like the ratings for that did not do very well. And you would think it's a title match. Like, why would people not want to watch? That's a big deal. Like, I wonder if there's a correlation between the two, and do you think that they would kind of go back to that, or are they pretty much on a course for a long time where they're just mainly all about the money fights, similar to boxing used to be?
That's tough to call, because I do see some good fights that they're trying to put together, but then I see some things that just doesn't make sense, and I don't know if they're trying to stick with rankings. I think that went out the window a long time ago, But at the same time, there's some fights where I'm like the Cormier fight, I don't really understand, but that's just me, I'm not. And you know what? I'm gonna be completely honest, man. I don't watch a whole lot of MMA anymore because of it, and I'm primarily I'm biased to my guys. I watch my fighters fight, and I watch their opponents at some at certain circumstances where I know that we might have a chance to fight them down the road or fight her down the road. So yeah, I'll watch that. But at the same time, man, being a fighter and being in the game for so long and being a part of this sport, it gets monotonous, especially with what's going on with the sport. It's not the same as it was 5 to 10 years ago. And at the same time, it could be good for the sport itself to hopefully make more money, so the fighters can actually make more money. Yeah. And if that's the turn in the right direction that we need to go to, and if it does cause the UFC or whoever to just go with money fights to make the fighters money, then I'm all for it. But then again, the fans have to understand that as well and buy into the whole situation. This way, the whole sport can grow and progress.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of, the betterment of the sport, I mean, I'm always a big proponent of competition. I mean, in any industry, you mean, be it professional wrestling, movies, sports, anything, science, whatever. Now, the next story we want to talk about was, Bellator continues its growth. I mean, it continues going in an upward trajectory. I mean, it's really become the clear-cut number 2 MMA promotion abroad. I mean, internationally, straight up, not just domestically. I mean, some of the things that Bellator did this year was they finally had their second pay-per-view in company history, which was a big deal. Also, in connected with their first ever event in Madison Square Garden. I mean, Bellator finally broke into the New York City market in the biggest, most famous fight arena in the world. I mean, they had the ratings continue to prove, and in some instances were better than UFC events. Now, of course, it was like what better, the top Bellator guys and maybe not top UFC, but still that matters that they had on par ratings. The Bellator heavyweight Grand Prix was announced, which is going to add a lot of excitement going into next year. One of the first fights is next month with Rampage versus who fight? Oh, Chael Sonnen. And then they put on events across the world. They had Ireland twice this year with James Gallagher being a main event. He got injured the second time. They did that event in Italy. They did Hungary. They did England twice, and then Israel twice, and a second time actually having meet and greets with some of the more popular fighters and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, this guy is a world-known, national state leader. Like, so to have him connected with the company says a lot for what Bellator is doing in that country. I mean, I'm not going to ask, can Bellator ever overtake the UFC? Because that's just impossible. But can Bellator get on an even ground where people start to really go, I don't know. Can they start splitting the fan base and some people start actually caring? Like, I'm a Bellator guy, I'm a UFC guy. Do you think that can happen almost like Pride and UFC was at one time?
Oh, man, that's tough to say, man. I mean, I do hope that at some point that Bellator makes its way up to make it equal playing field, because I do hear a lot from different fighters that they like to fight for that organization. Coker's doing a great job with the whole thing, with promotion, with, just the whole setup in general, treating the fighters the way they want to be treated, things like that. Not to say that UFC doesn't do that, but at the same time, that's just what I'm hearing from other fighters. But, yeah, man, I think that it'll help the entire sport, just so there's not just one dominant promotion and everybody's flocking for that promotion. Because at the same time, what if this UFC has, at some points has a terrible card on the weekend, and then you have Bellator that's on a Friday night instead of a Saturday, and that card is stacked, and then they're both fighting pretty much on the same weekend. The promotions are going. At least it'll be at an even playing field where you'll know that fans all over the world will still flock to watch Bellator, which will in turn help the entire sport of MMA grow and, like I said, progress further. But if it's so, dominated by the UFC, nobody's going to watch Bellator, and nobody's really going to want to watch the UFC fight. So now you have no fans watching the sport at all that weekend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and in the end, what the best part of it is, and this is always what the best part of competition is, it benefits the consumer, it benefits the fans, and there's no better, just crazy, awesome example than the weekend of January, I believe, 22nd, in that Bellator is going head-to-head against the UFC in two major cards. I mean, Bellator is going to be free. Well, that's what's great, too, is as long as Bellator continues to stay free and have that balance, the fans get the best of both worlds, because on Bellator you can go and see Lima versus McDonald, which is a fantastic fight. You're gonna get Rampage versus Chael in that first matchup in the heavyweight Grand Prix, and then on pay-per-view, if you want to watch that first in DVR Bellator, you got UFC where you got Ngannou versus Miocic, and as long as Ozdemir doesn't go to jail, him versus Cormier in two title matches. Those are two great cards the same night, and in the end, competition is not only great for the fighters because we all want to see them make money. It's great for the fans. We get more high-level competition instead of one company saying and making the say in everything and setting up all the good fights. And I think that's awesome. And in a way, anybody that hates on Bellator, you're kind of just hating on the sport. You want to see more opportunities. Yeah, there's bad things like, oh, this fighter's on this side, he can't fight this guy. But it still gives the opportunity for a lot of fighters to make money and a lot of good MMA action. And that's what we all want.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that would be the ideal situation in general for the sport, like I said.
Now, the next and third story I want to talk about is the continued growth of women's MMA. And this was important, too, because this year you really had no Ronda Rousey for the most part. She was not a picture at all. And I'm sure most people figured women's MMA might die off without Ronda Rousey having this major figurehead. But because of people filling in, like Cyborg being more of a part of the UFC, Joanna and Jacek just being a superstar, one to me the best female fighter in MMA history of all time. And then what's interesting too is that Holly Holm, off her win, despite having more losses than wins since beating Ronda Rousey, she has become a star. And proof is in. This year, women headlined 6 UFC events. Those being Holm versus Cyborg, which is this weekend, Shevchenko Pena, Holm versus De Randami, Holm versus Correa, Nunes Shevchenko, Modafferi Montano for the new 125 title, and Bellator had 2 events headlined by women. Julia Budd versus Blencow in a rematch, and Marlos Kunin versus Julia Budd 2 in 2 title fights. I mean, the fact that Holm was in 1, 2, 3 of those main events, and I think she lost 2 out of it. Well, she lost 1 and 1, and now we're going to see what happens with Cyborg tomorrow. But, I mean, both promotions introduced flyweight divisions, which fans have been clamoring for, especially UFC fans dying for 125 to finally get a UFC, and then Bellator does it. And that's probably Bellator's strongest division in terms of the 2 women. They have a lot of really young, up-and-coming, talented fighters like Aaliyah Malay McFarland, who's a champion at 125 Bellator. I mean, women's MMA, it really is coming along. I mean, and it continues to grow. Ronda Rousey set the ground, and you see a lot of new and young fighters coming up, and there's a lot of great examples for the young girls coming up to idolize, like a Tisha Torres and a Valerie Letourneau. It's pretty good for women's athletics.
Yeah, the one thing that I've learned coaching these females, man, is that they are very determined to prove a lot of people wrong, including the male counterparts of who they train with, or actually who, you know, they compete with on a daily basis inside the training gyms. You know, now, so, you know, the guys understand that females are here to stay, and they're actually really putting in the work, and they can fight, man, and they throw down almost more than the guys do, man. And I see it a lot, just in general, being a part of the sport. So it was a matter of time before all these divisions started to open up, and now that we got the new flyweight division, you know, I think that this is going to be something that's going to go in further and just bring in more talent, and take these young girls coming up, instead of having to, you know, go into like softball or soccer or things like that, throw down. They're really getting involved in mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and it's not like under the table where they can't really speak about it, or they don't really want to be, you know, it's something that's like, you know, they don't want to talk about, you know, things like that, or they're ashamed of. But for now, I think that it's just because it's like you said, with all these, you know, these role models coming up, females in general can actually look at these other females and see that it can be done, and they can do it on a high level. And that's something that's very good for the sport, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC finally making the division. I mean, Strikeforce made a lot of headway. Elite XC, when they had our girl, Gina Carano versus Cyborg. You know, they had these matches for the MMA fans that we all cared about, like, but it wasn't mainstream enough. You know, you had someone like Tara LaRosa, who was like the best female fighter for a long time, but she was just fighting nowhere important. Like, it wasn't on any major networks. It wasn't on any major events. Like, unless you were diehard, you really didn't know about it. But the UFC having these as main events, you know, it is so awesome for female athletes, because if a woman wanted to be an athlete and you see they get to see their male counterparts being in NFL and all these many sports, I mean, what's the outlet for professional women to make really legitimate money, to have a good career for their families? It's WNBA, which is still very, very niche. I mean, kickboxing and women's boxing are just not major sports, at least not here, you know, maybe abroad. So you even see female boxers coming to MMA now because it's a better opportunity. Yep. Holly Holm's leading the way with that. You got Heather Hardy, you got other fighters coming in. It's just, it's really cool. It's really exciting. And just like the men's side of things, you know, in the early days of the UFC, the 2000s, even before that, there was talent, but it wasn't, you know, as developed, because not other sports were pulling it away. I'm so curious to see in the next decade the talent, the athletic women that's continue to come into this sport and just really fill out the ranks and build up the talent level. Because, I mean, you get to see it with some of the very best. I mean, you get to help train Joanna and Jacek, who's laying the groundwork that you can just be a bad motherfucker And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you can kick ass, be a pound for pound fighter without a doubt. And that's just an amazing thing for, girls going forward and little girls. I mean, you have a daughter. I mean, it's a great example for them coming forward, just like we had Michael Jordan and these types.
Yeah, no, like I said, man, it's a great thing for the sport, but it's a great thing for women in general to get that empowerment to actually do a sport that they know that they can take it to the highest level and make some good money with it. So yeah, it's awesome.
Now, moving on. Now, well, that's the stories we wanted to talk about for 2017. Now, we'll keep things interesting, a little different than maybe other people are covering. Now, we have some other things to talk about, but first, we both are going to take some time and pick who is our fighter of the year for 2017. Phil, you're going to go first. Who is your fighter or fighters for 2017?
Yeah. So we've talked about this off the air, but basically I'm going to be biased for my first pick because I can pick two because it's my show too. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick none other than Dustin Poirier for my bias pick because that's my boy and he's American top team. I would say you could basically say he was 3-0 this year, right, Jason? Basically,
I think most of the MMA community felt that he probably should have been 3-0 at this point.
Exactly. With that move up to 155, I feel like we're hitting our stride.
Yep.
He's not having to cut that massive amount of weight. I finally got to watch Fightville the other day, the documentary that they did on him when he was just coming up as a pro. And, man, he's made leaps and bounds from that time back in them small little towns in Louisiana, and just watching him come up from that perspective and now just dominating and being he just got his black belt, what I mean?
Yeah, I saw that from the guy who used to be in the Ultimate Fighter, right?
Yeah, man, what's his name?
Tim Creeder.
Creeder, yes. He's a legend over there in Louisiana too, by the way. So, just watching that and watching, the levels that where he's come from to now where he's at is just astronomical, man. But my non-biased pick is gonna have to be my man Robert Whittaker because he's just dominating, man. And honestly, he should be the middleweight world champion without any type of interim bullshit whatsoever.
I mean, he is officially now because GSP relinquished, so now he finally is, after all this time, he's officially the middleweight champion now.
Yeah, I mean, without any other circumstances, that's who it is. You know what I mean? Beating the two best guys, arguably in the division, the two up and coming that could have actually won the title before him. But yeah, and I think that he's just on a tear. Next year is going to be even better. I don't really see him getting beat, unless maybe a good wrestler is able to, take him down and kind of ground him out. But I don't know, man. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I like both of those picks. I mean, Poirier he's always been a fun fighter, but it's great to see, you see this in a lot. I think just the maturity come in, and they smooth out the rough edges, and he's really become so much more polished. You've really helped him just become in high level fitness, fantastic shape. He can go 5 rounds no problem. He's always fun. He's just getting better, and that move up, it just shows you again. Guys like him, Donald Cerrone moving up, the guy who I'm going to pick up for my fighter of the year. I mean, all these different guys just moving up to a healthier size and not cutting too much, and they're just in a better shape, and more so than the guys they're fighting. It's just been great. I mean, and Robert Whittaker, the guy has been fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know if there's really anybody. I'm fascinated by who he's fighting in Australia, and that's going to be crazy, him going to Australia as champion and fighting Rockhold. But yeah, I mean, he's already beat Yoel. I mean, Yoel would have an interesting, of course, a chance in a rematch. I mean, I love Weidman, but I just think the speed advantage would be too much. You know who would be interesting? Let me throw this one out at you. And it's also another guy who was at the previous division, Whittaker was at 170, and is now at 185. What are your thoughts on if Gastelum fight Fort Whittaker?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I still think Whittaker will get him. Just because I think he's maybe a little bit too elusive and he's a little bit more in shape. In Gastelum, man, he just comes out of shape. I don't know why I mean, he can't make 170.
Mhm.
We know that. I mean, it's hard for him. And then he comes in kind of soft at 185, and
His punches ain't
that's
soft though. He's a legend killer at this point.
no, that's true. That's true. But 5 round fight. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, can he really take that with him? Can he get in optimal shape to where he can last those 5 rounds? Where I know Whitaker can. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, but I would definitely, if I had to take my pick and put my money on it, I would pick Whitaker all day.
Yeah, I mean, and then that would send a great message to the sport and I'm hoping this happens, if they have a title fight between those guys showing, look, they were at 170. It didn't work for them. They were cutting can be a detriment to your skill set. You know, especially in a year where so many guys had weight cut problems. Oh my God! Speaking of weight cut problems, if most people might have seen it, Gabby Garcia and the Freak Show fights at Rising misses weight by 23 pounds. Again, weight cut is ridiculous, but to see two 170s fighting for the middleweight title, that would say a lot. I say a lot in that. Maybe weight cutting isn't a thing. Unless you're close to your weight, you should really be at an optimal size. Maybe move up. It is in your best interest. And my fighter of the year pick is a guy who moved up in weight and just had a fucking banging knockout year, and that is Rafael Dos Anjos. I mean, when he went up from 155 to 170, I was worried. I was like, yeah, he'd be the fastest guy, but he was never a big 155 Rafael in terms of height. You know, I didn't know if putting on muscle would slow him down a little bit. I wasn't sure about his chin because he has been rocked at times. But he completely shut my mouth up by beating Tarek Saffiedine, former Strikeforce welterweight champion. Then beat Neil Magny. I mean, got him down to the floor and just made it a child's play very quickly. And then the really impressive shocker of them all, just a few weeks ago, beating Robbie Lawler. If you were to put a gun to my head, that's like, no way Robbie Lawler is losing to Dos Anjos. Not because Dos Anjos isn't good, but it's Robbie Lawler. This guy fought at 185 most career. It's a 185er versus a former 155er. No way if this guy's getting Robbie Lawler down. Johnny Hendricks had tough. I can't see it. And he got him down. And for the most part, not dominated, but he beat Robbie Lawler clearly, took some of his shots. I was so impressed. So 2017, I think he had the best year of any fighter with what he did at 170 this year.
Yeah, no, he definitely did a good job, and I think that move up was better for him. Now he can do more things with the weight that he has.
Mm-hmm.
I know that he works with Nick Curson out there at Speed of Sport, and he does a lot of plyometrics, a lot of explosive power force development type stuff. So obviously he's gonna have some power still, and even more so now because he's carrying around that extra muscle that can transfer over into power output. So yeah, man, and as long as he can maintain his endurance, which it wasn't a problem, obviously, you know, because and that's another issue of weight cutting too. You can lose some cardiovascular strength too as well because it's just taxing your body completely, and you're not going to come in 100% if you're having to cut massive amount of weight.
Mm-hmm.
So from that aspect, like I said, with any other fighter, same thing with Dustin, same thing with Dos Anjos. Everybody who moves up, and even Cowboy too. I mean, he lost his last fight, but he looks good at 170.
Yeah.
You know, minus the fight that he had, but everybody's looking good when they go up in weight and they're actually fighting at the right weight class. So you're right, and he's I think is he getting a title shot? What's going on with that?
I don't know. He who is Colby? Of course, Colby calls out everybody. Colby would call him out. He said, nope, that ain't gonna happen. It seems all indications he is willing to wait for Tyron to come off his shoulder surgery, get healthy, and get a title shot. The question is, will the UFC do it? I mean, he seems deserving it, former champion, but he's not what you would call a sizzling kind of a hot, fighter that made people watch. Though, however, that fight in that event that just passed, week or so ago, did well in the ratings. Now, is it because RDA is popular and people want to see him, or is just the Robbie Lawler effect and the guy's just the lovable superstar fighter that we all want to see? So the question is what the UFC does. It seems to be between him and Colby. I mean, what is your thought? What do you think they would go with? Because I've even heard rumors of Colby and Tyron on Ultimate Fighter as coaches too.
No, that's not gonna happen.
No, you don't think? I can totally see that happen. They TV people love drama, and they would love Colby on TV every week.
Yeah, but let me tell you, man, that's not gonna happen. just trust me on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But Tyron wasn't impressed with RDA's performance. And he said it too on Fox. So I'm not even making that up. Like I'm saying some crazy stuff, that may get me in trouble. But nah, he said it himself. He wasn't really impressed. So I don't think he's apt to really taking that fight unless the UFC absolutely makes him take the fight, which I doubt. And then, who knows if the UFC was actually impressed with the fight. Just because of the fact that Robbie got hurt, something happened to his knee. I think he hyperextended it or maybe tore a ligament, something like that. It looked like it got twisted in the mat when he fell over. And he even said it too. He said it to Henry in the corner. If you listen, he said that my knee's messed up. He couldn't even move it. So he wasn't even taking the stool because he couldn't get back up. Yeah. So, but not taking anything away from Rafael Dos Anjos. But at the same time, it wasn't the most, like, you didn't think it wasn't the most knockout, drag out fight that you see a Robbie Lawler fight go to,
That's
but
true. That's true.
He did he got the job done though. You can't really blame him or did, but then again, like I said, Tyron wasn't impressed with how he could have finished Robbie and didn't, but at the same time, that's Robbie Lawler, man. He'll rope-a-dope you until he hits you with an overhand and put you to sleep. So
wait, I have something to bring up, and I've been a total Tyron Woodley defender. I mean, the best fighter in the world, but isn't it kind of contradictory for him to be talking about other people need to finish people?
Yeah, well,
I don't want to put you in a bad spot, but I just came to mind, like, he's talking about this guy didn't finish people, and then everybody got on him about Maya. It's like,
Nah, you got a point there, but Tyron's trying to look for money fights too.
Yeah, and he's dying for a Diaz brother to come out of the woodwork bad.
Well, listen, and I hate to say it, man, but I don't even want to hate to say it because I like both guys.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But Kobe and Tyron would be a pretty big money fight because of the fact Kobe is doing what he needs to do to sell some tickets.
Yep. And that's what I talked about in the article for MMA Suck. I mean, he's becoming that guy that he's so annoying and pissing people off so well. People are just going to watch that and root for Tyron Woodley despite being booed so they can beat up Colby, that he can beat up Colby Covington. And Colby's completely fine with that if it gets him a title shot. And that's what the sport has come to.
Yeah, he has no problem being, the quote unquote heel of the whole welterweight division.
Of the whole MMA world at this point.
Yeah. You might as well just call it that because he's basically at that point right now.
Yeah. I mean, moving on from our fight of the year, I have come up with a list of my own now. It's a top 10 list. However, this will be different than traditional lists. This is not a general pound for pound where previous requirements matter. This is a list of the 10 best fighters of this particular year. So, of course, you won't see Conor because the guy didn't even fight, but you will see some familiar faces. You already know my number one. It's Rafael Dos Anjos, but I will start from number 10. My number 10 is Cynthia Calvillo, 4-0 in 2017 with 3 stoppages, fighting at strawweight, 2 submissions, 1 TKO, a strong candidate for title contention in 2018. She's a big name, a really hot, fast, rising star prospect in the division. It's going to be very interesting to see where she goes. She's fighting Carla Esparza, the former champion. Next, that if she beats her, 5 straight wins, undefeated in UFC. She's one to watch. Number 9, you should like this, is Santiago Ponzinibbio. 3-0 this year with wins over Taleb, Gunnar Nelson, and the recent war against Mike Perry. Very impressive year for Santiago. I mean, he did a lot. I had a tough time. It was between him and Darren Till. I just went with Santiago because he had more notable wins. A really good year this year. Number 8, you're going to hate me now, is Rose Namajunas. I mean, big wins after losing to Kovalkovic. I mean, she beat Michelle Waterson, and she beat a legend. I mean, we can debate, and we've talked about on the show how maybe weight cut affected Joanna, all these kind of things. When you beat a legend like Joanna, the best women's fighter of all time, you've done something good, and you've had an amazing year. Tyron Woodley's my number 7, 2-0 in 2017, wins over Stephen Thompson and Damian Maia, both very impressive, 2 of the uber elites in the division. Robert Whittaker, number 6, 2-0, wins over Souza Romero. Now number 5, Francis Ngannou, the scariest creature monster in MMA right now, 2-0 this year, first-round finishes over Andrei Arlovski and Overeem. I mean, what are you thinking of my first 5 so far? Feeling good about it? Any issues?
I like the Santiago pick. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
No, Rose. Let me tell you something about Rose, man. I do respect Rose. Rose is a great fighter. She did her thing. No. Don't even say it's all good. And she deserves her respect. And honestly, I like that pick. I think even she could be up there a little bit higher, to be honest.
All right, well, let me get to my final 4. I mean, you know one. Number 4 is Max Holloway, 2-0 in 2017 with 2 third-round TKO wins over the legendary Jose Aldo. I mean, that's impressive. You know, he can, honestly be number 3. It could go either way. I mean, he's just had that kind of year. He's put his name on the map as one of the best fighters in the game today. My number 3, I went a little different. I went with Volkan Ozdemir. He's 3-0 in 2017. Wins over St. Preux. Then he knocked out Misha Serkinov in the first round, and then knocked out Jimmy Manuel, who was looking like he was about to be the next number 1 contender, and one of the best strikers after Anthony Johnson in the division. Knocked him out in the first round, really laying claim to, wow, this guy's a guy to watch, and talked himself, and with his actions, getting a title fight next month at UFC. I think it's 222. Number 2, we were number 1 in Rough for Designs. My number 2, Demetrius Johnson. I mean, he's number 1 any other year, but just because this is a year-specific list, I had to give it to RDA just because of what he's done. But Demetrius Johnson, 2-0 in 2017. Submission win over Wilson Hayes, arguably maybe the best grappler in 125. And then the insane submission, freaking wrestling, video game, bullshit submission over Ray Borg in his last fight. That is my top 10 fighters of 2017. Phil, your thoughts on my top 10?
Top 10 looks good.
Anybody I missed you felt there should maybe be in there? Maybe Dustin Poirier?
Why wasn't he? You got 10 in here, man?
Yeah.
Listen,
who would you move out? Let me know. Who would you move out for Dustin?
Man, come on. You at least get Cynthia Cavallo. I mean, she needs a little bit of time before she...
But 4-0 in 1 year. That's impressive. I know the division's not as good, but...
Who she beat? Who did she beat?
Wait, hold on. Let me go back.
Go back. Yeah, go back, please.
Let me go. Okay, I didn't write it down, but she beat people in the UFC. That's 4-0 in the UFC.
Listen, man. You know, I hate, and we were just talking about this because I hate that I'm contradicting myself, but a lot of the female fighters aren't as, or at least in the new divisions, we're not talking about 135 or anything like that. But yeah, man, I don't think she beat anybody notable. So.
Well, wait, I will say this. She went 4-0 in a division with 2 fighters. One you train and one you currently, or formerly trained, Tisha Torres and JJ.
Did she beat them?
No, but if you say their division is weak, I mean, they're the champions of it.
I'm about to hit you with the rock. It doesn't matter. Nah, it's a good pick.
Anybody else other than Poirier you felt maybe could have got into the list? See, I also wanted to make note, guys like T.J. Dillashaw, Stipe Miocic, Ferguson, Garbrandt all had nice, really big wins this year, but they each... Oh, no, excuse me, Garbrandt didn't even have a win because all of those guys only fought once. I felt like in a year when we're talking about the best fighters in a given year, you fight once, even if it's a big win. I mean, it's hard to skip other people with one win, you know?
Oh, man, you know who you missing? I forgot. His name is... What's his name? John Jones. Why he not in here?
Well, he only had one win. You know, as debatable as it is, and not real. He only had one win too, though.
Oh, he actually fought this year?
Yeah. I mean, he fought this fight, and now it's kind of just disappeared off the record books. It's kind of like a folklore thing now. It's you've heard of him, but if a tree falls, if it really fell, kind of thing.
Okay, but why? Okay, so I see it's nothing but the UFC in here, though. What about the Bellator?
I really thought about Bellator, and it's a fair case in terms of talent. I mean, there were some guys that had good years, but if we're sizing up competition levels, it was guys on the way up. I thought about Douglas Lima, only fought once this year. Rory McDonald only fought once this year. They have no heavyweight champion. Ali Malay McFarlane, new champion, who's on a winning streak, only one fight this year. Julia Budd, maybe, I don't know about the division. It's not as strong as the UFC's 135. Who else we got? Patricky Ferrer, he was hurt. He didn't fight a lot this year. Darren Caldwell, while he beat Dantes, he lost not that long ago. So there were some guys that are talented enough, but just didn't do enough in 2017 calendar year, I think, to make the list.
All right, I want to add one more thing. Okay. I want to just go ahead and give a shout out, or I want to go ahead and talk about at least two of my up and coming notable fighters of this year.
Is Jordan Young one of them?
Jordan Young is one. Good job. He is definitely on the rise, man. Watch out for that kid. And then the other one is an ACB fighter.
I knew you were going to say that was one there. I knew it was going to be that. Who's this guy? Tell me about him. Give me the Phil Daru scouting report on this guy. I don't know much about him. He's a two-division champion now, right? Are you talking about that guy that you posted about?
We're talking about Albert?
Yeah,
no.
I think so.
Well, Albert's one of them, but Albert is a little bit older now. He's like in his 30s.
Okay.
But I got a younger cat. And I think if you've seen me, if you watch any of my Instagram videos, Yusuf Ryusov from Grozny, Russia, ACB fighter, just won the interim featherweight title in Moscow at ACB 77. This kid is an absolute beast. Joanna seen me working with him, and she DM'd me like 3 times telling me that he was the man. Like he
What's his strongest base? What's his base from? Does he have a specific strong point?
Kicking ass. That's just it.
Wow, that's a good base to have.
The kid is 22 years old, bro, and not an ounce of fat on him.
Wow. And
he's drug tested. Don't worry, it's all good. And to be honest, man, I haven't seen any holes in his game. He's only lost one fight, and it was due to. And I'm gonna say this before I got there, it was due to a weight cut issue.
Oh.
And because of the fact that it went 5 rounds, he lost to the title holder. So now they're gonna be doing they're gonna be doing that elimination and trying to see who's gonna be the undisputed featherweight title holder. So that's gonna be at the next ACB. But he will be coming to American Top Team for a little bit, and I'll be going back to Bearcoot to work with him. But yeah, man,
so he primarily works out of Bearcoot, but he's gonna come to ATT just to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, just to get different feel. Come to Florida, sunny Florida, why not?
Yeah, I mean, come on, yeah. Even though global warming has made the frozen Iceland that was Russia not as frozen as it used to be.
Shit, you wouldn't tell me that when I was there.
Now, for our final segment, I wanted to transition into some of the major stories to look for in 2018. Now, fellow MMAsucker.com Jacob Debitt wrote a great piece for the site recently on the topic called 6 Burning Questions for MMA in 2018. So I want to go over these, fantastic questions that he asked and chat with you on how you see things shaking out in 2018. Now, the first one, which is a given at this point, it was a major story in 2017. Will he, won't he? And now it's going to be the same thing in 2018. I said it after the Mayweather fight. You can look it up. I said Conor McGregor, I don't know when he's gonna fight again. I don't think he's gonna fight this year. Just there's no point. Where's the fire? Where's the money? And he didn't. Does Conor McGregor finally come back in 2018?
Yes.
Who do you think he fights? Does he fight the interim champion, or he goes and fights a quote unquote money fight somewhere else?
Okay, in my heart, I want him to fight who he needs to fight for the title, which would be Ferguson.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say in my mind, which I know, I'll go with in my gut, I'll say that he will go with the big money fight, which will be Nate Diaz again.
I keep on seeing this a lot. And now that he's vacated the 185 title, do you think we're going to start hearing rumblings of GSP versus Conor McGregor?
No, that's not a good fight for Conor. And he knows it. It's just, it doesn't make any sense for him.
Why is it not a good fight for him? Especially at GSP's age? Just the size?
GSP bigger. He's got a solid wrestling base. Great jab. And the game planning of GSP, he's the older version of what Conor is now. You know what I'm saying? And just more polished. So Conor obviously knows the game. He knows how to game plan and knows how to, pick his fighters apart due to his knowledge of the game. But GSP has been doing this for years upon years, and since Conor was an amateur. So I don't see that ever being something that he would think about unless he totally is full of himself, which that is a possibility also.
Yeah. I mean, if he fights Ferguson, which is a fight everybody wants to see, how do you think that fight shakes out?
Nah, he'll finish Ferguson.
I think so too, yeah.
He'll finish Ferguson either the first or the second round.
Yeah. I just
But you know what? Ferguson is tough, man. He's durable.
Yeah.
But man, it's just his style is too. I don't know. It's just not a good matchup for Ferguson whatsoever.
Yeah, he gets hit too much. He's willing to get into wars. He has the level of will and just sheer, passion and rage, just like a Diaz brother. But they fight well in that they use their length. They try to avoid shots. They pitter-patter you. They get you off your game. He's so unorthodox. Part of his game is getting people to the ground. I don't think he's going to be able to get Conor down or keep him there. I mean, he'll have tricks that Conor's never seen before because he's done that to other fights. Just when you're easy to hit, you have a very unorthodox, kind of clunky, not smooth style against a fantastic counterpuncher who you even said it on a previous episode of the show is probably better after doing all that boxing work. Yeah, it just doesn't make much sense. It seems like a terrible matchup, but I mean, I still want to see it either way. But I mean, the next storyline, considering we're talking about an interim champion and the guy who forced it, is the interim title belt madness over? A great point from the article by Jacob is from 93 to 2015, only 7 interim belts were ever instituted, and those were for good reason. Randy Couture left to try to fight Fedor. Somebody got injured. Blah blah blah. It made sense. Since 2016 to this year, 5 interim title belts were made. I mean, insane. Do you think this is just not something that was just an anomaly for 2 years, or is this going to be a continued thing the UFC just loves to do?
It's going to continue. I hope it does diminish a little bit. It doesn't go as crazy as it did for these last couple of years, but it's never going to change. It's never going to go away. It's a part of the sport. It's a part of combat sports in general. So I don't think it'll ever really change, but hopefully it's not as drastic and as so widespread as how it's been for the last couple of years, because it gets a little stupid. It downgrades the importance of the belt itself. So I hope it does just kind of calm down a little bit at least.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about earlier a lot of points. I mean, I hope it does too, but yeah, I completely agree. They're going to continue doing it because, I mean, it's, you see fighters, spreading their wings in terms of their power, like Conor's doing, and a lot more guys are doing it, which is good for the fighters, but it's bad for the guys behind them and the schedules and sport in general, and even for the fans. It just convolutes and waters the title down, which is something you do not want to do. Now, our third point from the article, which this is a fascinating point. I'm going to read a lot of stuff, a real interesting points from the article, and get your thoughts. Now, the question is, will the Muhammad Ali Expansion Act pass into law? Now, Jacob actually explained this to me a month or so ago, because I had heard about this but didn't really know what it was about, and he explains it in his article with the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act, or called Ali Act, was passed in 2000 to address widespread corruption and exploitation in the boxing industry, much of which was personified in the treatment of pugilistic icons Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, amongst others, by the notorious Don King. The legislation invalidates coercive contracts, so for example, those are that in effect over 12 months and require fighters to sign over long-term rights in order to compete for a title. It imposes financial disclosure requirements designed to empower fighters in their negotiation with promoters, meaning that UFC has to tell you how much they made at events and all this kind of stuff. It requires fighters to sign over long-term rights in order to compete for a title. I got that. With promoters, I got lost. Damn it! Imposes financial disclosure requirements designed, that. Create various obligations on athletic commissions and sanctioning bodies aimed at increasing transparency and uniformity in how boxing matches are organized. I mean, that's big too. A bill to expand the Ali Act to MMA was introduced in the House of Representatives in 2016 by Oklahoma Congressman and former MMA fighter Mark Wayne Mullins. Thanks to the lobbying efforts of the Mixed Martial Arts Fighters Association, the bill now has over 50 co-sponsors and is expected to pass the Senate in early 2018. However, just like it's funny, like the culinary union used to do to the UFC in New York, how the UFC is lobbying heavily against this act getting made. I mean, let's look at it. It allows for, fighters to only have like a year contract. They can't sign these long 6-fight or 3-year contracts. It's a year at a time. Promotion's got to let you know what they made in an event, so that instead of just fighters showing what they made, a promotion's got to show what they made at an event, which is big, because if fighters were only $1 million and the fighter in the event made $4 million, that shows a lot. And the commissions have to be more transparent. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you see something like this happening, and do you hope something like this happens?
Yeah, I think it'd be good for the fighters for sure. But because it doesn't bind them to, keep them at one promotion.
Yeah.
To be honest, they can get out if they need to. And then again, does that help the sport out though? Does it help the promotion grow, or do you have because you really don't want the UFC to go down either though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We want both Bellator and the UFC to rise together, so that they can both be on equal playing fields. We don't want one to trump the other. So at that point, that may be the issue, because if fighters see that, let's say just for instance, the UFC does this, if fighters do see that, okay, the UFC made $4 million on a fight promotion card, and they only made pennies on that, 2%, maybe 1% at the most. Who's to say that that fighter might be like, well, fuck you, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, or pay me more, and they really can't say much about that, because they're caught red-handed of how much they actually made over the fighter. And it has to be fair for the fighter, because if you don't have a fighter, you don't have a promotion, you don't have a show. So, yeah, I think for the fighter's sake, it would be great. For the promotion, obviously, it would not be. And that's the obvious answer in general, but that's my honest answer.
I mean, I think the UFC seemed to clearly avoid doing a fighters union for as long as possible, and that fact may bite them in the butt, because maybe if they had set up a fighters union long ago, there may not be a push to implement what was put in boxing in this Ali Act into MMA. It's all about fairness and transparency for the fighters now. And if there was an MMA Fighters Association to collectively bargain and help the fighters out a long time ago, the UFC probably wouldn't be avoiding this, because this will probably hurt them financially. Now they're gonna have to pay fighters more for sure with this kind of thing. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? And you talked to a lot of fighters. I saw recently that the Reebok deal, the payouts was recently adjusted, and some of them were more favorable to young, newer fighters getting more in early fights, and it wasn't as helpful. But the fact that this kind of agreement is just like, oh yeah, so check your email, there's a new addendum to your Reebok payout thing, see you later. The fact that that's not collectively a bargain by representatives of a fighter union, that's like really fucked up. Like it's like, fighters put their lives on the line. It's kind of like any other job. So yeah, your insurance is different. You're gonna pay 3% this month. Oh yeah, see you later. Bye. Have a good holiday. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, I mean, Reebok's got to do what they got to do.
Yeah.
I know that that's, for some fighters that's awesome. For others, it's not.
Yeah.
It just really depends on the circumstances of the fighter. It depends on how long they've been in the game, how popular they are from the fans' point of view, and that's how Reebok distributes the money, cash out. Because if you're not a big draw, you're not going to make money, and that's just the way it is, man. I hate to say it, but the only difference between that is that with the NFL, a guy playing on the practice squad can make a solid living.
Yep.
Just being on the practice squad, where if you're a new guy coming into the UFC, you may still have to have a job.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, and that's where the sports differ, and that's where that it takes time to build up a sport. And even though it's popular now, it's still light years behind where the NFL, the NBA is right now. So from that point of view, Reebok has all the right to do whatever they want to do,
Yeah.
because the sport isn't grown yet to where they have the ability to be like, here, I'm gonna drop, such and such cash on you so you can not have to worry about anything, even when you're not fighting, and that's a monthly payout, and they get that, they do get that from Reebok, and then they get, their sponsorship deal, or their extra cash come per fight. But at the same time, it really depends on who the fighter is, like I said.
Yeah. And this is not to kill Reebok, because it's not their fault. They negotiated with the UFC. It's on the UFC that's kind of doing this. I mean, they're just passing on the word, and they're making these adjustments that they feel is helping everybody else. But it's unfortunate, and it's you wonder how different the sport could be if there was a fighters union, and if that was pushed and stuff like that. But I mean, moving on to our next point. It's a simple question. It's an interesting question going into 2018. It's going to be one of the bigger stories for Bellator. Will Bellator's heavyweight tournament be successful?
It'll be entertaining. At least it'll be entertaining. I got King Mo on there. We got Fedor on there. There's a bunch of good guys on there, good fighters. I mean, even Chael Sonnen still can throw it down. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be good, just entertaining, because of the fact that there's just so many legends in that heavyweight tournament.
Yeah.
They're all legends if you think about it from this. I mean, I guess one can say that. I mean, who's all in the tournament? We got.
Mitrione, Roy Nelson, Chael, King Mo, Rampage, Bader, Frank Mir, and who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting one other person. Damn. So wait. Chael,
So it's
huh?
Bader, right?
No, it's Bader, Mo, Roy Nelson, Mitrione, Frank Mir, Fedor, and Chael, Rampage. Okay, that's the 8 right there.
Yeah, right there. So, yeah, I mean, Mitrione, you could, make an argument to say that he's still got a little bit more time in the game.
And he's the favorite right now. He's currently the betting favorite.
Well, he's one of the youngest too, by the way.
But that's not saying a lot. He's old as fuck in this tournament.
But he's let's say he's the youngest out of all of them as far as fight experience.
Yeah, that's true.
So
very true.
He'll get as much damage as all the rest of them.
Yeah.
And then and to be honest, I mean, he equally, he has, because he's played in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see that he gets knocked down. He's taking head trauma.
For sure, and that'll play a big role in that too. So his career won't be as long either. So, we're looking at all guys in this tournament that are on their last hurrah. So that may be something of interest too as well, and I think that will make it successful. So and I'm bringing King Mo out to Russia to wrestle some of the Chechen boys.
Nice.
Yeah, we're gonna be broadcasting that, doing some footage on that, but we're gonna get ready for this Bader fight coming up, and then see what happens from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they made some interesting changes, and there's also a piece I wrote for MMA Sucker you could look up where I compared the Bellator GP to the Strikeforce heavyweight GP they had not too long ago, and the Strikeforce one had more relevant guys. You had Fabricio Verdun when he was young or coming up. Fedor wasn't as, past his prime as he was. He was a big free agent signing. Had Alistair when Alistair was on fire, turns of coming off the K1 stuff. A lot of interesting names in that one. This one, they went with putting the bigger names in the drawing factor, because I was surprised Chet Congo and Bobby Lashley are not in this tournament. They really should be. Technically, they're two of the better heavyweights they had, yet they didn't put them in, probably because they wanted to go with name value, and they wanted to put these matches as headliners of events, which it will be. Also, I think they learned a good lesson, too. I like how they staggered the fights. Like, they have one this month, then a month or so later, and then a month or so later. So if there are injuries, they can adjust. They're on the fly. They have space to maybe fill in and change it here and there. And I like that, and I think what they've done, and Coker's a smart guy, and the way they market is really smart, the way they advertise, I think it will be. If you're looking for entertaining, fun, and finally getting a Bellator heavyweight champion, I think you'll get it. If you're looking for relevancy and to find out who the best heavyweight in the world, no, you're not going to get that, because none of these guys are really that. I mean, if Bader wins it, that's interesting. Maybe he can make a case, and he'll be a two-division champion, but yeah, I agree. I think it'll be successful. Now, the next story, the question is, Will the UFC land the TV deal it wants? Now, some of the key points of this is the UFC's original 6-year deal with Fox ends at the end of 2018. A new deal has yet to be renegotiated, and the UFC has now passed that exclusivity period where they can negotiate with other networks. They can do that now. Some of the rumors have been HBO might be very interested because their boxing numbers, they're starting to clearly lose to Showtime. They're starting to come back on the boxing ratings a little bit, so maybe they invest in UFC. The Turner networks of TBS and TNT have been rumored lately, and ratings now have generally, like we mentioned before, have kind of come back a little bit with the UFC, so they're not quite the powerhouse they were, or in an upward trajectory they were when this 6-year deal started out. Do you think they get the deal they want? I think they'll get a good deal, but they won't get the deal they really want.
I honestly think they need to re-sign with Fox.
Yeah.
I don't think TBS and TNT would be a good fit for them, and HBO would just be terrible because obviously a lot of people don't have HBO like that.
Yep.
And to be honest, I don't watch HBO. I don't watch TV anyways. But but like, I don't really know many people that watch HBO like that anymore. And Fox Sports 1 and all these other, and I think they have like FX that they broadcast on too as well. It's just there's a lot more that people can actually see, and that actually helped the UFC in general get to the mainstream. Yep. They're on with other networks and other shows, with other, like I said, with other Fox Sports shows. Yeah. So I mean, with that being said, I don't see it being a good fit for anybody else but Fox. I hope they do land that deal. But yeah. So what was the other question though?
I mean, well, that's not that bad. And I wanted to bring up also, and this is kind of an industry kind of question. I mean, not question, but point that, Fox, 21st Century Fox is the company that owns FS1, FS2, Fox, all those channels. They recently sold a lot of their assets to Disney. Now, Disney, brought like the Fox 20th Century Fox movie studio. They're going to have FX now, National Geographic. So for all those Avengers fans and Marvel fans, we probably going to get Avengers and X-Men now finally in the same world. I'm excited about that. But speaking of that, I mean, they still do own some of the networks, as in like Fox, the major network, FS1, FS2. I would think like FS1 and FS2, now that it's not a part of a company that's connected with movie studio stuff, they kind of need UFC. Like if they lost UFC all of a sudden, Fox Sports is a lot less interesting because they don't have NBA. They have MLB, they have college football, but the UFC always being consistently on that station, I mean, it's a big deal for them. So I think if they lost that, that'd be interesting. HBO, I'm sorry, Phil, a lot of people watch HBO, especially best show on television, Game of Thrones, massive ratings. They do like $2 million an episode in budget. I'm sorry, Vikings doesn't have $2 million episode a budget. It doesn't.
Whatever, man. I was ask you. That's why I don't watch HBO, because they don't got Vikings on there. So there you.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think they'll get the deal they want, but not that they love. Now moving on to a final point, also a very interesting topic, sort of like the Ali Act question, and I have a lot of points from Jacob's article here. What will happen with the class action lawsuit against the UFC? Now he brings up 3 years ago, almost to the day, former UFC fighters Kung Lee, John Fitch, and Nate Quarry, which we kind of remember this story a little bit a few years ago, filed the class action lawsuit against Zuffa. Now it's WME-IMG, the UFC's parent company at the time. In a nutshell, the fighters allege the organization has engaged in anti-competitive conduct to maintain an illegal monopoly over the promotion of MMA and obtain this is a big word, monopsony power in the MMA market. If it's successful, the suit could lead to an award of hundreds of millions of dollars to the fighters affected by the conduct, which could number in the hundreds, and fundamentally change the way the UFC does business. Now, he also adds, after surviving a motion to have the lawsuit dismissed in 2015, the case has been quietly but steadily making its way through the U.S. District Court system. And reports indicate that a decision will be made whether the class will be certified sometime in 2018. If the class isn't certified, the lawsuit will likely be dead in the water. But if it's certified, it's possible a trial could be held in late 2018 if the parties don't reach a settlement before then. I mean, 2018 can be a really bad year for UFC brass and a great year for fighters if this lawsuit were to go through and the Ali Act were instituted.
Yeah, but at the same time, it may be good for the fighters.
Yes, it's very good for the fighters.
Yeah, it's good for the fighters, but at the end of the day, they need a promotion to fight for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a catch-22.
Yes. Yep.
And then maybe Bellator will obviously take its reins, but like I said, I personally don't want to see one promotion trump the other. And it would be cool to see maybe even like something like ACB come up or something like that. But at the same time, man, we need the UFC to still be on top, or at least be at the same level as Bellator. So I hate to say that I would want to see it or not want to see it. I just think that it would be, like I said, a catch-22 would be a good and a bad thing.
And that's a perfect thing to say because, these former fighters or whoever respected could get some money. I mean, important money. I mean, there's probably fighters out there that are in a bad situation. Not every fighter can open up a gym that's going to be successful. That's just not the case. So it's beneficial to them, and it's beneficial to the guys going forward. But however, if the UFC were to have to pay, and people may forget when WME IMG brought the UFC, they took on debt. Now, if they would have to pay out a few $100 million in a lawsuit, the way that might be balanced is maybe there's less UFC events. Maybe they really can't afford as many events. Maybe they can't afford as many fighters. Now, that could be beneficial to Bellator, but I'm sure also Bellator has a set budget. So it could cost fighters that are currently fighting their job. So you said it perfectly, catch-22. It really is, could go either way. It's very interesting. But I guess that's when we're bringing up all this stuff. You know what? Just kind of like, in professional wrestling, WWE is clearly the biggest company, but there are a lot of fighters out there making professional wrestlers out there making good money out there in the independents in Japan. And then you're starting to see that in MMA. You got Bellator coming up. You got ACB, like you mentioned. You got KSW in Poland. You got Ryzen. You got Pride, 1FC. So it's good that you're finally seeing some strength in the industry, that there's a lot of options finally to make money for fighters, which is pretty damn cool.
Oh yeah, definitely, and that's good. The more promotions that come out that actually grow their own promotion and grow their business, that's more opportunity for fighters around the world to make money, and that's what we want to see, and that's where you'll get to see the most talented fighters fight other talented fighters, and that's where you get a show for the fans to see.
Now that is it for our episode. Phil, what are your final thoughts of the MMA year 2017 and the year that was Daru Strong Training Systems in 2017? Final thoughts.
I believe we hit it out the park, man. I think it was a home run for sure. Not to use some baseball analogies. I don't know why I was with that. But it was a good year, man. And like I said, we're only getting better. We're only progressing each day and each year. So 2018, I'm very excited, ready to go. I'm probably going to not even wait for midnight. Probably going to go to sleep early so I can wake up early.
Wow.
Yeah, why not? But
is the wife going to be okay with that?
Bro, she's probably going to be sleeping before me. Okay? remember, she's 8 years older than me.
Oh.
So, but let me tell you something. She looks younger than me, so it's all good.
Oh.
So she's what? Dave, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you out like that.
2017 was a great year. Finished off school, started the show, just a lot of good things. Excited for what's to come in 2017 with Fight Strength Podcast, FSP, the writing work. MMA in general was a very good year. I'm also excited boxing had a very good year, and that was really cool. A lot of good fights in boxing. It's good combat sports in general is very strong. You had Bellator Kickboxing, K1 Glory, all these things doing very strong, doing very well. 2017 is a good year. 2018, other than the presidency, should be a good year. And if he left, that'd be even better. But getting away from politics, end of the show, give them your social as always. Give them the Instagram, give them the Facebook, give them the Twitter, give them everything they need to know to follow Phil Daru.
All right, perfect. So first and foremost, go check out my website, darustrong.com. Also, my Instagram is @DaruStrong, my Twitter @DaruStrong. Snapchat, Daru Strong 1. Also, be on the lookout. I'm doing several seminars coming up this next year, 2018. I'll be in February, I'll be in Atlanta. In April, I'll be in California and LA with PJ Nestler and Dan Gardner. And in June and May, I'll be in Poland. So go ahead and check those out. Also, in a couple of weeks, I'm dropping my 24-week, or you could call it just a 6-month fight strength. Notice I said fight strength. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, fight strength program for MMA. So this is going to be more for general population, but it also has some obviously some fight orientated specific drills in there to help the general public get into fight shape. Let's put it like that. And that'll be dropping on fightcampconditioning.com, and you can check that out there. So that's it. That's all I got. 2018, here we come.
For me, Instagram at Jericho Vendetta, Twitter, Cheap Seats Chat. Follow us on Fight Strength Podcast or Fight Strength on Facebook, Fight Strength _on Twitter. Don't forget all of our episodes, previous and future, on Google Play, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Player FM, all these stations. You can go check out our older episodes with a bunch of awesome fighters and trainers. Also look out for my stuff, MMAsucker.com stories. Big shout out to Jacob Debits for letting me use his story. We're talking about what's to come in 2018. I am Jason Burgos. He's Phil Daru. See you in 2018. Bye-bye. Happy holidays.
Bye.